Hey everyone, my name is Tyler Sheedy and welcome to a new series I'm starting called Sheedy's Course Reviews. Today I'm here at Wickham Park in Connecticut and we're going to review this course and see how it is. Now every year this course is host to the Connecticut State Open and then every 5 years the New England Championships. And also every year it hosts the Wickham Invitational. So pretty big races. There have been some great athletes who have run here and it's a very famous course. Now today is October 25th, I believe. It's one day before the Connecticut Divisional Championships. So the course is pretty well set up for races and they're racing here tomorrow. So I'd like to think it's in a good spot to kind of judge it for how it's going to be for a cross-country race. And then before this, I just ran the course without the camera and ran it in 1951 and kind of comparing it to other courses I've run, around 20 minutes. Definitely on the harder side of courses, but it wasn't crazy difficult. Now what I plan to do is rank each course based on 6 different factors. 3 of them are going to have 20-point factors and 3 of them are going to be 10 points. So some are like weighted more than others. And those are going to be layout, elevation, and spacing are 20 points worth. And then spectator ability, scenery, and then and like an X factor sort of landmark on the course, those are 10 points each. I forgot to mention, I'm also taking into account the footing of the course. That's also worth 10 points, so a grand total of 100 points. So here's the starting line, and you head out that way. It's nice grass, but there are a few weird bumps on the right side as opposed to the left. And you're going towards a pretty narrow opening. Here we go. So as we go through here, you can see it's not the widest place to go. It's a pretty quick funnel. So in terms of spacing, that's not great. So yeah, right here, you cross a road. Yeah, we can't be more than 200 meters in, and it's already a pretty thin funnel. I imagine at smaller meets, not a huge factor there, but I've raced this course at the New England Championships, and I actually got tripped up there and fell and broke my ankle, so maybe I'm just a bit biased here. But all right, now we're heading around the back of the course, kind of on the very outer side of the park, and heading onto this little path here. The footing through here is really not that good. It's like some sand right in this section, and the grass is all bumpy, so I'm not a huge fan of that. But like spacing wise, I think we're far enough in at this point where it's fine. It is a slight uphill. All right, now we're out in the grass and we're gonna head into an open field in a second. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this. It's like really no natural barrier for the course, which I usually like. Like usually for a field like this, you either start in here or like use the perimeter of the field. And in this scenario, you're just going straight across. There's really no idea of where to go apart from course markings. It's very bumpy, but it's a nice downhill. You can get some good speed here. Head to about a half mile in. You head down and around these trees here. I think this part's great right here. It's like nice and wide. Uses the little layout of the course here to create a nice section. A challenging hill, but it's good footing, so if you're in the race, then you're in a good spot. And now we're approaching the mile mark, and this part was on my run through of the course before this, probably the hardest part. So here's the mile right here, and the footing is fine, but it's like not, it's a bit slanted and just in general pretty steep, so that is definitely tough. Now once you get past the mile, you get a beautiful view of Hartford. That's the city of Hartford down there as you go across the field again from the upper side. I actually love this part of the course. This is very nice here. So I would say The build up to the mile was definitely the worst part for me, but directly after, you get that great view and a nice descent on some pretty nice trails and grass, so it gets a lot better. And you got this really long stretch to go down. I just passed the finish right there, and it's very nice. So yeah, personally, I love this part. It's a long stretch, and you kind of get to see where the field's at. It's nice and wide, good footing, downhill. All right, we're around the outside of the park now, heading to the infamous Green Monster. And here it is, making our way up. There's a tiny first slope, flattens out for a second, and then a much larger second slope. And here's the top, but there's still more after that. The Green Monster at Wickham. It's a grass hill just before 2 miles into the race, and you're kind of on the outside of the field here, the main starting field. So yeah, it's all grass, good footing. Definitely steep and kind of like two different sections, two pitches right there. For me, it's not a great X factor. It doesn't live up to the hype that it gets, but I think it's still a cool spot. We descended from the mile mark at this part, and now we're approaching the 2 mile, and we'll get that nice Hartford view again. So I believe this is 2 miles right here, and right after that, you come out to the field again, and out there is your nice view of Hartford. Let me slide over this way a little bit. Definitely a good shot of it there. Where we came up this way first, and now we're heading back. But instead of heading back to the field, we are staying straight here as we came up from that side, staying straight here and going around the lower loop of the course. Now this is a very long stretch before the finish line, and I remember when I was here as a sophomore, and you're at about 2.5 miles, and I was in pain. But it actually, running it now, is a very nice part of the course. That's actually like a bird sanctuary right there or something, so that's cool. And yeah, we're just jogging along here now. You're at about 2.5 or so, and trying to fight towards the finish. In my opinion, besides the view of Hartford, this is probably the prettiest part of the course. Nice gravel path, you're in the woods, it's nice and wide. Unfortunately, you're very tired at this point, but it's a great spot. Now we're back out onto the main fields. There's the Green Monster you go by, and you're on the final loop. Now this part's pretty good. It's a great finish, great footing, bit of an awkward crossing before your final sprint. Once you're through this, it's a straightaway, uphill, good finish. All right, and here we are at the line. Obviously, no races today, so nothing's set up yet, but tomorrow there probably will be a pretty big banner or something, and that's the course. All right, so for layout, I'm giving it a 16 out of 20. Reason for that being, I think the layout's very good. The loops are nice, and it's kind of just like a good loops at certain times throughout the course. Just works well with how you want the race to play out. The reason I give it a 16 out of 20 as opposed to 20 out of 20 is just because I think that it doesn't utilize the natural barriers around the course that well. Usually you want to find courses kind of hugging the tree line, but this one kind of just cuts through the middle of fields at some portions, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But in general, pretty good, so I give it 16 out of 20. For elevation, I'm actually a pretty big fan. The one thing I would like is if there was a portion where there was kind of a bigger hill The Green Monster is kind of steep, but it's not that big. And you find other courses where there's like one giant hill that makes it like a really tough spot. You got to really push through. And this one's more of like rolling hills throughout the entire race. I'm gonna do the math and figure out what the actual elevation is, but I'll put it up like right here or something like that for you to see. But in general, I think it's pretty good. I'm gonna give it an 18 out of 20 for the elevation of the course. I'm not mad about it at all. Spacing is probably the biggest issue for me on this course, just because I think the start is not adequate for a race that's gonna host New England's. The start's just too narrow and too short to really kind of thin out the crowd in the way you'd want it to. It's just an awkward start, and the fences kind of make it so that you're really forced into awkward positions. And for me, myself, I can testify to this because I was trampled at the start of this race when I ran it a few years ago. I just think the first half mile is really bad at letting the best guys get to the front and kind of thinning it out in the way it should be thinned out. It's kind of like if you can't get out, you're really trapped, and that's something you don't want on a course like this where it's hosting huge races. I should mention my spacing is 13 out of 20. For spectator wise, I think it's pretty good. Actually very good. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10 because the start, the finish, and the Green Monster are all in the exact same field. So if you're a spectator, you can get to plenty of places to watch the action. So yeah, I'm definitely a huge fan of it. Think spectator wise, it's a great course. For scenery, it's definitely nice. There's some good portions of trails, but also there's a lot of fields, which I'm not a huge fan of. But I will say the view of Hartford is very nice when you're coming past the 1 mile and then going right past the 2 mile as well. That's a cool spot, but in general, the fields aren't that pretty in my opinion. And there's some sections that it's really just not that exciting. But I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 on that one. All right, folks, it's Tyler here after the fact. After some further consideration, I've realized I kind of was a bit too harsh on the scenery, and it's actually very pretty there, so I'm going to bump that up to a 9 out of 10, actually. Wickham Park is beautiful. I'm sorry. Footing is another thing I'm not a huge fan of in this course, just because I think that there's a lot of portions where the ground is sloped, where there's one side that's higher and the other's lower, and you're kind of running really awkwardly, or the grass is just really bumpy, or it's sandy on the dirt sections. So that stuff I'm not a huge fan of. So because of that, I'm going to give footing a 4 out of 10. I just think it's really not very good for that sort of thing. There are some portions where the grass is nice and you're able to coast downhill, but to really open up and feel good and make a move and attack on this course, you want it to be nicer and smoother, and it's just not at some sections, so that's why I'm giving it a bit of a lower score there. Finally, for the X factor in the course, the Green Monster, the landmark, I honestly was a bit underwhelmed by it. You hear all these stories about it. It's this, famous part of the course, and it's really just a tiny grass slope. I mean, not tiny, but it's not that long, and it's kind of just not really that exciting, to be honest. It's in the middle of the race, and usually I look for something that's going to be either really, really hard, really long, or really isolated in the course. It's where you really need to focus up. But this one's just like in the middle of the race and the same field as the start, and it's just not that exciting to me. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 on that. Sorry, Green Monster fans. I know I'm going to make some of you mad, but for me, it just wasn't that exciting. So if I'm correct in the math, it should be a 70 out of 100. So that's a C minus, a little bit below average, but it's not terrible. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I think that there's a lot better courses out there, and I think they could have created this course to be a bit better, and it could have been better maintained. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of good stuff here. It's a very famous course and cool portions of it. So definitely enjoyable course. All right, and that's Wickham Park. So hope you enjoyed, as I said, my personal ranking, 70%, C minus, but nice course. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.